Hello, and welcome to the Neighborhood Conversations. My name is Templeton Sawyer, and it's a pleasure to start off our episodes starting highlighting Pride Month. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. We are so excited, and I'm so excited to first introduce our co host, Hoon. Hoon is an amazing individual who works at Teamwork Cooperative. You have a new position, Hoon. Welcome. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you, Templeton, for having me on here. And yes, I do indeed have a new position right now. I'm kind of in that transition phase of learning this new role and kind of, figuring things out. It's very tough, information overload. Things been a lot, but I'm just kind of suiting myself into it. So it's been a great experience.
Awesome, awesome, Hoon. Hoon, thank you so much for taking the time out to co-host this amazing episode as we highlight Pride Month. Hey, love is love, queer is love, and that's something that we're going to introduce our guest today, Susanne Litke. I really am so excited to have you on. I'm gonna do it the teamwork way of starting with an employment question. Tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you, Templeton, for the invitation to join the podcast. Um, I'm hoping that my glasses are quite prominently showing. This is Pride Month, and it's incredibly important to all of us. I am a queer lawyer. And I'm also the chairperson of the Nova Scotia Rainbow Action Project presently. And I've been working for a number of years supporting folk in the queer and trans community to access just responses from government and supporting folks, running an organization that is all about equity, justice, and human rights for queer and trans folk in Nova Scotia. So we are about trying to create change in our communities and neighborhoods, and also trying to shift things in society at large so that everybody in the 2S LGBTQIA community are celebrated, included, and valued.
Wow,
That's me.
that's amazing, and thank you so much. Welcome to the
I'm
neighborhood
also
conversation.
I'm
Yeah,
also unapologetically queer.
I agree. I am unapologetically queer as well, and so I'm so excited to have you on to this conversations.
Great.
Officially, hey, welcome to the neighborhood conversations.
Great.
We're gonna start off this question series with the the main question: why do we celebrate Pride? That's like an awareness that people should know why we're celebrating it and why this is important to us.
Yeah, so we celebrate Pride because of historical exclusion and lack of understanding and fear about folks who are in the 2S LGBTQI community. So we've made progress in society, in Canada in particular, with better inclusion. There are still folks left behind. There are still folks who are excluded. And so, the fight is not over, if you will. We still have work to do. And in particular, we think about our non-binary members of our community. We think about our gender fluid, our trans folk, and our intersex people who really have been marginalized even within the 2S LGBTQI community. And so there's a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge. We need to continue to be bold and upfront and out so that we can have good dialogue in society around,
Right.
these folk and our identities and our various, who we are, if you
Yeah.
will,
Yeah.
and so that we put an end to the discrimination that has been so harshly felt by our communities over decades.
Definitely. Definitely.
Awesome. I'll kind of go into the second question here, Suzanne. I
Okay.
guess this will be a question more for people who are not, that don't know much about the community and would like to learn more about the community. What would you say is the underlying difference between sexual orientation and gender identity?
Okay, so it's important to be very clear that these are two separate concepts. And even though we are all lumped under this umbrella of the rainbow, we call it the rainbow umbrella, sexual orientation is very different from gender identity. Sexual orientation is about how people experience or don't experience sexual interest or attraction. And so it's the direction of someone's sexual interest or attraction to people of a specific gender or to a specific sex or to no one. So, for example, our agender, our ace folk, asexual folk would not experience sexual interest towards anyone. So that's different from gender identity, which is about our internal sense of self, of being male, female, neither of these, both, or an other gender. And for transgender people, their sex assigned at birth and their gender identity are not the same. And so that's basically the definition. And it is something about, it is really an internal sense of who we are and what our gender is. And it's not something that that can be imposed on you. It is that, if everyone is given the free opportunity to express their own gender, they will.
Yeah.
We find that even children who are 5 and 6 years of age, that's when gender identity is expressed initially. And if allowed the freedom, children will express their gender at a very early age. And it's only because of societal norms and societal impacts that folks hide their gender.
Right. And I totally agree. The word express, we have the opportunity to express our identity in the way how we feel, and we have it, we should be accepted, and we have the right to speak up and to correct when it needs to be corrected. So that leads to my next question on acceptance. How do you see more or less acceptance of the LGBTQ 2+IA community? Do you feel that we are being accepted, or how we're being accepted in that way? Yeah, let's go that way. Yeah.
So Templeton, it's kind of it's acceptance is really not the word where we don't want to just be accepted. We want to just be, we just want to be ourselves and be included, right?
Right.
And so the question is more, how are people who are not in the 2S LGBTQI community, how do they, perceive us? And how do they understand us? And is there a deep understanding of who we are? And acceptance is like the first step, maybe, but it's not the end all, because we want to just be allowed to be who we are without any discriminatory practice, without any slights, without any name calling, without any hatred or fear about us, because we're not dangerous people. Right?
Really?
Did you know that? We're not dangerous people.
Not dangerous people.
Yeah, we're not. And we're not, there's no agenda that we're trying to take over the world or change the family dynamic or create, a new world. It's just let us be, And so, what I think, when you ask the question about where are we have some distance to go. There is still very much a lack of understanding about trans folk, still a big lack of understanding about intersex folk. Intersex people are still coercively assigned a gender at birth by their parents and surgeons. Unnecessary surgeries are done to these children to fit them into a box of male or female, when they could just be left alone and, enjoy their bodily autonomy until they make their own, until they have their own internal sense of self, what gender they are. And so, there are lots of ways in which, we have gay marriage. And I think that when we achieved gay marriage in Canada, that was like, okay, tick that box. we're done.
Yeah.
The queers are here. We're okay with them. Just let's move on, right? And let's not have these discussions anymore. But that was really just the very tip of the iceberg, because there is systemic homophobia. There is systemic transphobia. And now the big one that I'm working with, or that we at the Nova Scotia Rainbow Action Project are working with, is the binarism. The fact that we are living in a world that exists in male, female, women, men, and there's no place exclusion, in excluding entirely a group of people who are non-binary and gender fluid, and are two-spirit folk as well, can also identify as non-binary people. So the question is, do we have full integration? No. Do we still have work to do? Yes. Have we come some distance? Well, we're a lot further than many countries around the world.
Totally.
And so that's another thing to be very cognizant of, is that, so many places globally people are still killed for being in the community. They're still ousted from their families and their communities. So, yes, we've come some distance, but we've got a lot more work to do, especially globally.
Yeah, we sure do. Yeah.
On that note, I know, like, where I come from, which is South Korea, they're still very far away from getting to where Canada's at. So it's very unfortunate seeing this distance. We're seeing that gap between the two countries. Yeah. But so next question, Suzanne. So this question is more for people that are not part of the community. So, like, if I hear rumor that someone is lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender, how should I respond to that rumor, and what are the best practices?
So you're asking if somebody says, "Oh, I think so and so is gay." Yeah. What do we do about that?
Yeah.
I would just respond to, like, what business is that of yours? So why are you titillating about that information? It's not relevant to anything that we are doing. It's calling somebody out about being a like that rumor mill can be so damaging, right? Mm-hmm. And so just even it provides a sense of othering, and it's just not kind. So you could easily say to someone who's rumoring, like, that's just not okay with me to be talking about somebody's gender, somebody's gender, or somebody's sexual orientation or gender identity. If they are, so what? Yeah, it's no big deal. Yeah, like, are you going to are you gonna put a cross up and burn it? Like, what? Why do you need to know, right?
They're not going to harm you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So I would make I always want to take every. This is something that you could offer people. I always like to take every opportunity as a teachable moment. Right. So when somebody is rumoring, I would say, so let's talk about that. Why is it important for you to be guessing about somebody's gender identity, or somebody, like, what is going on with you about that? What's your thinking behind that question? Why are you asking me that? Is there something I can share with you about the 2S LGBTQI community that might help you understand better about why it's not okay to rumor? Using those moments. I call them teachable moments, and take advantage of them whenever I can. Yeah.
I look forward to my family's security in the future. That's the main goal as a father.
The empowerment from changing careers has really just made me want to get out of bed in the morning.
I'm looking forward to growing my business. So I want to hire people like I was hired. I want to give guys that chance.
Il me fera plaisir de continuer à travailler avec les immigrants francophones en Nouvelle-Écosse.
I am looking forward to the financial freedom that I never had before.
I totally agree with you on those teachable moments, and normally some of those teachable moments has to deal with in the workplace as well, because sometimes in the workplaces where you hear some of those comments utterly made, and so what are people saying? Oh, that's so gay. I don't care about person's sexual preferences. What are other phrases have you heard in the workplace that people have utterly said, and how did you respond to those type of comments? If persons have said that, because you know we have to be inclusive, but sometimes people don't know. They say comments, but don't even know that people are a part of that community, or I'm a part of
Yeah.
that community. If
Yeah.
I've actually experienced that, where I say, okay, now I used to not be comfortable to say that I was a part of the community, but now this year I can proudly say that I'm more advocating and more stepping up myself to say, hey, no, I'm
Yay.
queer. I'm a
Yeah.
part of this community. You're
Yeah.
not going to speak about my community that way, and not going to allow you. So, like, yeah. What
So,
do you do?
there's lots of innuendo. There's lots of, like the gay floppy wrist. There's calling somebody a dyke. There's, comments like that are totally offensive. Like, I'm going to quote here: a man dressed in women's clothing. Those are really hurtful and harmful things.
Yeah.
I experienced something similar in a workplace that was actually like a very open. I was openly lesbian in this, openly queer in this workplace, and we were off to a retreat, and the people in the workplace were trying to figure out, like, because we could only afford to have people share rooms,
Right.
and so I'm the only dyke in the town, right? I'm the only dyke in the workplace, and so there was this big debate behind my back, asking the question, well, who can we put together with Susanne, because she's queer. And so it's like the assumption that just because I'm a lesbian, I'm going to, attack somebody that I happen to be sharing a room with at a retreat. Like, those assumptions about who we are, that we can't control our sexuality, that we can't control our impulses, that we are absolutely, if we're a gay man, we're going to also be a pedophile, right? So all of those assumptions that have been historically put in people's minds around fear, those are the things that continue to live on in subtle ways, right?
Right.
And our own Canadian government did the nasty thing. I mean, they purged all of us out of the military and out of the RCMP and out of the civil service during the LGBT purge, because we were considered to be a security threat.
Yeah.
And so if the whole country of Canada has, if the whole government of Canada has identified this group of people as being dangerous, those messages kind of live on over decades, right? And so we're still dealing with that kind of fear and unrealistic, or those assumptions that were made back then, because it's part of people's history.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to still do a lot of educating and work. And, when I do trainings, I talk about the purge, and I let people know what actually happened during those 3 decades in Canada after the Cold War, and why, we were interrogated and lost our jobs and pushed out of an employment that was suited for us entirely, and
Right.
well trained, and all of that. So it's like, we have to understand our history, and that's another reason why we have pride celebrations and pride events, and talking about those historical situations that have created the homophobia and transphobia that we exist in with right now.
Yeah.
Next question for you, Suzanne. I'm just gonna pull up the question. So if somebody wants advice on what to tell their roommates, friends, or family about being lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender, like how can they seek help, and how can they go about disclosing that to their family or friends?
So coming out is a very big um,
It's hard.
it's a very big event for someone from the community.
Right.
And we basically test it out, right? So we test it out with our closest friend, we test it out with our closest sibling, we test it out with people that we trust and people that we know who are also in the queer community. So to come out as trans, or to come out as non-binary, or to come out as a queer person, it's a process, and often the workplace is the last place that we come out. And so you'll find many times that people will be expressing their gender, their true gender. They'll be secretly in the closet for a number of years before they come out, before anyone really knows. So we have a sense of safety. We kind of get a sense of who's going to be our allies and who's not, right?
Oh yeah, we know.
We know that,
Yeah.
and once you're in the community, your gaydar is also very rampant. So you'll be able to pick people out that will also be in the community. I just, for example, had an osteopathy treatment this morning, and I knew immediately that my gaydar is up. And I had a great chat with this person who was giving me a treatment, and and we made this great connection during a medical treatment. So we have that sixth sense, if you will.
Yeah.
And so if your roommate is not somebody that you can trust, or not somebody that's going to be willing to say, "Hey, that's cool," then get a new roommate.
Yeah.
Because hiding in the closet is damaging to your personhood. I mean, anybody that's had to suppress their gender identity, suppress their sexual orientation, suppress their expression of their gender, and anyone who's done that for a length of time will know that there's an internal struggle, there's internal damage done because your gut is hurting, right? It hurts. Right. And so when we are free to be our true, authentic selves, and when we're able to march in a pride parade boldly with our flags, and our sunglasses, and then there's some joy and euphoria that comes. Yeah. You've heard probably a lot about gender dysphoria, and that's the sense of someone who, has been assigned a gender at birth that doesn't match their true gender identity. And so there's this dysphoria, there's this disconnect between what my body looks like and what my gender identity actually truly is. Right. And so what we know is that gender dysphoria can be very debilitating and can be very harmful. And every time somebody is misgendered or dead named, we call it, every time that happens to a trans person or a non-binary person, there's harm done. Yeah. But on the other side of it, when your body aligns to your gender identity, and people are using your proper name, and people are using your proper pronouns, it's euphoria.
Yeah.
Like it's the world is beautiful.
Yeah,
right?
It is.
So that's how we want to see our world look in the future, is that when people express their true gender identity, let's give them all the power behind that, and help them with the surgeries they need, and make sure government uses the MSI program to pay for those surgeries and those procedures, and make sure that all government forms, for example, don't require a dead name, that they're quite clearly inclusive with gender markers, male, female, other, non-binary, make sure that they're respectful.
Right.
And I think then, like I can tell you every time I'm in a place and the speaker opens with, "Ladies and gentlemen," I just shoot daggers. Like it makes me so angry because every non-binary person and gender fluid person in the room
Yeah, that is
is
so true.
is excluded,
That
you
is
know?
true.
And so it's not ladies and gentlemen, it's hello people.
Hello. Yeah.
Way to go, folks,
Right.
we're here.
Yeah.
It's using gender, it's using language
Right.
that is not gendered language
Yeah.
when we are communicating with each other. And I think, it takes work. Like I've been practicing this since I've started working with trans rights work, and I've been practicing on a regular basis using using language that's not gendered. And I do my very best. Sometimes I slip up, but for the most part, I'm using folks and people and language that is neutral.
Right. And that's so important. Language is so important to be inclusive in order to include everyone. And I've actually learned that as an individual coming to Canada. When I came to Halifax in particular in 2018, I learned that diverse attending Mount St. Vincent University, the inclusive language of hey folks, hello everyone, making sure that that language is there to not exclude, and that's very important, Suzanne, as we continue to be inclusive in this world, and also in the community and in our neighborhood for sure.
Like when we see something, even if we are not trans or we're not non-binary and we're not in that where it's not harmful to us, but if we notice something,
right?
If we, I'd love to say to the Prime Minister of Canada, could you please stop using the words all the men and women in Canada? Like, can you please change your language?
Yeah.
So I can be that ally for our trans and non-binary people to call out binarism when I hear it.
Right.
I can use my privilege as a lawyer to fight legislation that is exclusionary and that creates a situation for harm of harm for people in our community who can't be parents of their own children because they're in a same-sex relationship. I mean, there are lots of ways that we can each individually step up and call out those places where harm is done.
Right. Totally agree. Totally agree for sure. And as we continue to wrap up this conversation, we have one more question for you, Suzanne, and Hoon's going to ask that question for you to wrap up. And this is going to be targeted towards employment as we continue to give persons with in employment and persons who are employing our community that perception. So I'll turn it over to you, Hoon.
All right, I'll fire away here, Templeton.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with growing companies, that driving diversity in the workplace, how can these companies better hire people in the LGBTQIA plus community? I stuttered that a lot.
Oh, well, it's a really good question. And so I always say to workplaces and businesses and corporations that you have to do the work of understanding our communities before you want to hire. And I'll give you an example. I did a training with the recruiters for the Canadian Armed Forces east of Montreal. And in that group of people, of about 100 people in the room, when I asked the question, about the apology that Prime Minister Trudeau made and the purge, there was only maybe 3 or 4 people who put up their hand that even knew about it. So the recruiters, the session was about how do we get people from your community to join the armed forces? Well, my question back, or my response back to them, was, you've got to understand the community. You've got to know our history. You've got to be respectful and understand us before you try to recruit us. Because if you don't understand, and if you haven't done the Trans 101 class, you're going to immediately create harm when you do your interview and misgender somebody.
Right.
So like every place, every workplace needs to have some training, needs to have some deep understanding, needs to do their homework. And then their workplace needs to be a welcoming place. So you have to put policies in place. You have to, create that friendly environment for trans folk. You have to make sure that there's a gender neutral bathroom for non-binary people. You have to make sure that people are not going to freak out when a trans woman goes into the women's bathroom. Like, you've got to make sure those things don't happen in your workplace. And if you can be sure that that's the situation in your workplace, then we want to join your place of work.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
But until you do that work, word's out on the street that this is not a safe place for me. Okay. Like your workplace will be spoken about on the street in the queer community, that this is not a safe place for us because of these things that have happened. And, when you're in the community, you hear those things, right? You say, oh no, we can't work for that. We can't work for that group. Can't work for that group, because they don't even they don't know what equity, diversity, and inclusion even stands for. So like the homework is important. And then also having champions in your workplace. So, if you have somebody, like, don't give them the whole lion's share of the work of educating people, because that's not fair either. But, having role models and having somebody at the head of, around the board table, having somebody who's prominent in your organization, who's quite obviously queer, will make a difference too, because there'll be this willingness to not make a deal about it, because it's really not relevant, right? If I have legal training, it shouldn't matter to anyone if I'm a trans male person, or if I'm a lesbian, or if I'm a queer, or if I'm two-spirit. Like, it shouldn't matter.
Definitely.
It's my ability to do the work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How is that for an answer?
And that's so good. No, and that's so good as we wrap up. Love is love. Queer is love. Go out into the community, educate yourself, go out into the community and learn about our community. As we wrap up this episode, I want to welcome you back into the Neighborhood Conversations to our next episode as we continue to celebrate Pride Month. Be loved, be square. Hey, Susanne, you have been an amazing official first guest of the Neighborhood Conversations. Thank you so much, everyone.
Inviting me, and have a great
Suzanne.
day. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Happy
Yeah,
Pride.
thank you so much.
Happy
Yeah,
Pride,
happy Pride.
everyone.
Happy Pride,
Be yourself, everyone.
This podcast is funded by the Government of Nova Scotia.